Hello everyone, welcome back to Witchinary. If you have yet to subscribe to this channel, then please do so because we're getting crafty. And today I wanted to share with you guys my creations using the June 2019 Simon Says Stamp card kit. Now this card kit is called Leafy Frames and it brings a bunch of stuff. My favorite things that came in it are definitely the Cartabella supplies like the tags and the frames, as well as the pattern paper. I felt like the tags and the frames you can definitely use in scrapbooking, you can use it in gift wrap or in gift giving later on, and the actual pattern paper is just so whimsical. One thing that I really love about Cartabella is the fact that they can really give you this contemporary sort of feel to their pattern papers as well as their designs without getting too contemporary and not getting too vintage. It's like the right amount of like, I don't even know how to explain it, je ne sais quoi, but I really am into it, so I had to break everything up on camera for you guys. I did give this card kit the benefit of the doubt, and I decided to make like one Halloween card just to see if I can kind of break up all of the spring floral monotony of it all, but if you guys want to see that, stick around till the end of this video, and I'll show it to you guys. To start, I cut all of my card bases, including a few A6 size card bases, and I also cut all of my pattern paper and I put it in stacks. Where the top part of the paper where the hole is my little tiny strips. I also made a column pattern paper thing and a pile of the bigger cut pattern paper. And that allows me just to see all of the pattern papers a little bit better so I can mix and match. For my first card, I took this wonderful white floral card pattern base and I took my foam tape and I put just this green piece of pattern paper on top of it. From the tiny little strips, I cut one in half just to get rid of that little hole, and then I just adhere it directly onto the center of the green pattern paper because if you know me, then you know that I absolutely love to like mix and match pattern papers like it's my job or something. I just love it. I adhere this to an A6 size card base, and I also added a ephemera piece to the center from the tags and frames. And because I felt like that pink was just kind of standing alone, I pulled out my Nuvo Bubblegum Pink Nuvo drops from my stash and just added a little bit of that pink to my card, and that finished off this card. For my second card, I kind of wanted a off beat sort of card, so I took my favorite pattern paper that came in this kit, and it's that pink pattern paper along with this pattern paper that kind of looks like the Victoria's Secret pattern for their bags, and I raised up my favorite one on top of that, but just like asymmetrically, and then I just added some twine to both of those and made a little bow. I was very inspired by some of the inspiration sheets that came in this kit. For this one, I was definitely taking a little bit of inspiration from Heather Hoffman. So after I'm done doing that, I go ahead and I secure my twine and I raise this up using some foam tape onto a black card base. I take some vellum and I cut it so I can just stamp down the sentiment sending to it. And for this, I'm just going to use my Hero Arts Watermark ink and my Copper Ranger embossing powder. I'm just going to heat emboss this quickly along with the sentiment of sending you hugs and love. I believe that's what it says. Sending you joy and love. I'm sorry. And I did make the mistake of just kind of like cutting this a little bit shorter and then raising it up with some foam tape. I should have left it larger, but once I was done doing that, that finished off this card. For my next card, I would have done this anyway, but it did appear in one of the inspiration, in the inspiration sheet. It was by Cindy Norberg. But I go ahead and I just cut a bunch of the floral pieces that came with the pattern papers. And I already had this piece of wine cardstock that I got from Paper Presentation a long time ago. And I decided to just kind of like raise up all of my flowers on top of this wine card base. I kind of don't want a spring card as much as a lot of people kind of want to do these like spring floral things. I'm kind of like springed out. We're in summer. I want to celebrate summer and I don't really like summer, so we're going to celebrate fall and winter. So that's what I did. I raised up some of these florals on foam squares and some on just foam tape because both have different dimensions, and you guys know already I'm a dimension queen. Once I was satisfied with how many flowers I can actually fit onto this card base, I go ahead and I heat emboss the Sentiment Smiles with that same Ranger Copper embossing powder. And once I was done doing that, I go ahead and I adhere this on top of a craft paper bag card base. And I believe I also pulled out my Nuvo drops here just to kind of like tie this maroon sort of color onto the pink of the actual flowers. And I also did have to go ahead and raise up some of those dainty little pieces with some foam squares just so they wouldn't rip or anything or bend. So that was kind of a nuisance, but yeah. So here I'm finally going to go and get those Nuvo drops, the same ones that I used for the first card, just to tie everything together. I really love blush and maroon. And yeah, that finished off this card. For my next card, I, again, was taking inspiration from Heather Hoffman. Up until this point, I was definitely like kind of just trying to play around with ideas. I wasn't really sure what I was going for. There's a lot that you can do with this kit, but I wasn't having many like original ideas because there's only so much you can use a frame for before it starts getting kind of like boring. So I go ahead and I heat emboss this frame as well as the words sending onto a piece of vellum with the same Ranger Copper embossing powder that I had used before. And I did go ahead and I cut some of this paper because it was way too long for my card base. And after I was done cutting it, I go ahead and I start cutting around this frame because, again, you know, I wanted to make it different than my other card, but I just wasn't having the best ideas, but I went with it. I wanted to show you guys anyway. Yeah, so I cut around my vellum and then I go ahead and I use this pink piece of patterned paper and I adhere the back of this vellum onto that pink piece of patterned paper, and then I just adhere that completely onto my floral card base, making sure that at least the sides of my vellum are adhered down so they won't warp too much. And once I adhere this down to my card base, I adhere the entire thing onto my actual card panel, which ended up being a green piece of cardstock that came in this kit. I did feel kind of like weird about it, or about the pink, so it was just too much pink. So I go ahead and I use a black piece of cardstock for this, and I cut it too small. It was horrendous, but whatever. I'm gonna go with it. I liked it. For my next card, I wanted to make another A6 size card, so I took the flowers or the little tag that came in this kit, and I just stuck it inside of a tag. And I secured that down with some washi tape, and then I just put a piece of twine inside of the holes of the tag, and I start making a little bow because why not? Who doesn't want a little bow with their flowers, you know? I don't know how I'm gonna mail this, but we're gonna make it work. Anyway, once I was done with that bow, I go ahead and I cut off any of the excess, and I raise that up on the strip that looks like the Victoria's Secret paper. And I also raised that strip on top of another strip because why not blend, you know, all of these different patterns in one card, you know? So here I am, you know, just raising one thing on top of another and adhering it down. But yeah, so that's kind of what this was. I do go ahead and I cut off any of the excess after repositioning this because listen, time isn't straight, my stuff isn't straight, I'm not straight, nothing in this world is really that straight, so cool, readjusting that. I go ahead and adhere this down to my card base, and that finished off this card. For my next card, I wanted to do something similar to my first card. I really liked it, and like some of my other cards were kind of disappointing. So I just go ahead and I just adhere the last bit of that Victoria's Secret paper onto my favorite strip of pattern paper that came in this pack. And then I decided that this kind of rosy sort of pattern paper would look good around this. I decide on taking a very plain piece of pattern paper as my base, and then I cut that rosy sort of pattern paper in two just so I can adhere it to the sides of this. I go ahead and I just adhere these pieces down onto my card base just so I can start finalizing kind of like what I want in this design. And that's when it hit me that something is missing from this. Like there's something that isn't popping for me, and I wasn't sure what that was. But then I looked in my stash and I found some of that mirror paper that came in the Hero Arts card kit for one of the card kits I didn't do. And I cut some strips and I decided to put them on the sides of my pattern paper just to highlight the center of this. And I felt like that really added that pop that I was looking for. And not only do I do this to this card, I also do it to another card that you guys saw earlier, just so I can, you know, kind of have two at least that I'm like super happy with, even if they are simple. But doing this just finished off this card and I really, really love it. For my next card, I decided, you know what, we're gonna finally use the stamp set. So here I am cutting some Strathmore watercolor paper. I actually got some Arteza watercolor paper just because I really want to try something different other than Strathmore and Bristol Smooth. So we'll see how that works out. I'm very excited to, like, you know, bring you guys that review. But anyway, I take this really large frame and I go ahead and I start stamping it down with the Hero Arts Soft Granite ink. I've done this before in my last video with Hero Arts, and I just like the softness that it brings to watercolors. So that's kind of like what I was going for. Once I was done with the edges, I pulled out two of my watercolor sets. I pulled out my Primamarketing Pastel Dreams watercolors, and I also pulled out my Jane Davenport Brights watercolor set. Why? Well, I started wanting to explore down this whole Halloween rabbit hole, but I also wanted to start experimenting with pastels and brighter colors because I do know that that's a very big summer theme, and I wanted to know what that would look like with just some gothic-y sort of colors. So that was kind of my inspiration for this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and color all of these little images in, and I do like how this came out. I felt like it could have been a little bit more summery. Around those empty spaces, I just go ahead and I make little dots and whatnot with different colors just so I can fill up some of that space. And the colors that I did use were not that dissimilar from what I did use in the center, so that was kind of a hint of like, don't go too far out of the comfort zone. I go ahead and I use this Hello stamp, and I go ahead and I heat emboss it with that same Ranger Copper embossing powder, which is just my new craze, and I use some mint cardstock to stamp love in the center, and I raise it up with some foam tape. And once I was satisfied with the fit of this card base, I go ahead and I just adhere it to a card base, and that finished off this card. Finally, I wanted to show you guys what a card would look like if it was Halloween-ish, but like still using these floral pieces. It's very interesting. While I was doing this, I kind of got this idea of like, I should have just done this entire set on like black cardstock because it does come in this kit. And just did a bunch of Prismacolor pencils on top of it and just made everything pop and feel like summer. So if you guys want to go ahead and do that, go for it. To stamp down my images, I'm going to use the Hero Arts Unicorn ink. It shows up beautifully on black cardstock, so it gives you this wonderful outline. You can honestly do this and leave it alone. You're totally more than welcome to, but I thought this was a good idea and I wanted to show it to you guys. Even if it's not Halloween. I grabbed some Halloween-like colors from my Prismacolor set, and I just start coloring in my my little images. Now, as you can see, like in the beginning, this could totally just be a nice jungle summer sort of card. So again, like take this inspiration, do whatever you want to do, but I wanted to make this Halloween. So from my stash, I also pulled out my Halloween sentiments from Simon Says Stamp, just so I can kind of give this a Halloween feel. I also use my paper rounder to just round off those sides. From that stamp set, which I'm going to link to below, as well as the kit because I'm not listing everything that came in this kit, I just used that little spider and stamped it down with some of that unicorn ink. And I also wanted to make a few little cobwebs just to, you know, drive the point home that this was Halloween. In retrospect, I didn't have to do that. I really liked how this just looked on its own with the like little cobwebs. It was starting to look very like neon light is on in the middle of the night sort of thing, and all the creepy crawlies are glowing. So I don't know why I did that, but I also take some bats from that stamp set and I just put them down on my card. And I took some yellow cardstock to just stamp down the, you know, the word Halloween from my stash, because of course I have a ton of Halloween dies. I'm a Halloween queen, so why not? I raised that up using some foam squares just so I can have that on my card. And from the actual kit that came in this month, I got the word kisses that I did some surgery on, and I stamped it down on some orange cardstock and raised it up. I go ahead and I adhere this down to a white card base, and that finished off this card. And as you can see, yeah, this can definitely work. I also did like the in-between of this card and the other card, and here it is. These cards were lovely. I did enjoy this kit. I hope that you guys got like a few ideas from this, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Have a great day, guys, and take care.